If you're listening to this episode and you listen to the recap episode, first of all, I want to thank you for joining us on the regular episodes this week. To start the week for Monday, we're going to talk about two cards, like I said in the intro, that have popped up that I thought were a little bit interesting. So the first one I can kind of quickly get into. The other one, I guess it's sort of the same. They're kind of the same. I think one got a lot more publicity than the other one. There was the 2020 Prism LeBron James 1-of-1, like the image with Kobe, him doing the Kobe dunk. That got graded by PSA. And I saw, I guess I thought I had seen it a couple places, but now that I'm looking back at it, I saw it one place. It was like a reselling Twitter that essentially said that it could be $1 million card. I don't know where they got that figure from. Like, they tweeted about this other card that I'm going to talk about as well, but like when you look at their account, it's not really like, they don't really talk about sports cards necessarily, so I don't know. When I see something like that on Twitter, I am a little bit skeptical, if I'm going to be completely honest, because like I said, I just don't know where this, I just don't know where they got that number from, or even like if the card is going to be sold, like if the card gets some more marketing in the next like week or so, which I think it probably could, then I don't know. I'll be very interested to know where that figure came from. The other card that I'm going to talk about, this reselling account also tweeted about this, but this was also like, this was kind of all over Twitter last week. I didn't really cover it last week because I didn't know that much about it, but I am seeing, looking back at it, I think it is worthy of talking about on the show. So there was a rare 1914 Baltimore News Babe Ruth rookie that's going to be going to auction, and it was graded by SGC. So SGC tweeted it out, and I believe that REA is going to be the one selling this card. And basically all the headlines are very similar, again, which is interesting because you see like the Washington Times, you're seeing like if you look at Fox Business, the New York Post, Forbes Money, like this reselling account, Talking Baseball, which isn't really like no, that's actually a different one. I'm scrolling through Twitter here because if you search Babe Ruth card, that's where it's popping up. But like some fairly decent sized publications are talking about this card, and basically every headline is like, this is going to be the most expensive card of all time, breaking the $12 million Mickey Mantle SGC record. I think there was an SGC 9.5 Mickey Mantle last year that sold for $12.5 million, and people are saying that this card has the potential to break that one. And again, I think, I don't know who's really to say. Again, I'm definitely more of a commentator on things that are going on in the hobby. I think my analysis on what I think a card could sell for may not be as good as, especially this card. If it's other, I feel like with this card, it may not be, I may not be the like number one person to ask about it here, if I'm going to be completely honest. But the fact that these publications are saying this, they're the ones that are saying that it's going to be selling. So it's like, I'm just looking at that saying like, where is this number coming from? Who is trying to, like, are they spending money on marketing? Because like, the thing is with those companies nowadays, like if they're writing about something, an auction or anything like this, if it's not like a mainstream regular news story, most likely those publications are being paid to written about it. And I think actually that's one of the things that's almost issue when it comes to just media in general, is like, I don't know if there's a percentage that I can really put on it, but like a decent amount of articles that are written about specific things are actually paid for to be written about that. Like you are seeing like major news publications write about things because they're being paid to, not because necessarily they want to, or I don't know. It's an interesting story. It's a really awesome card. It's an iconic card. So that's one thing where I'm like, yeah, sure, maybe it could break the record, but like how are we, I guess I don't know. I'm hoping people kind of are understanding sort of what I'm trying to say here. Marketing of a specific card in an auction, I don't necessarily love a lot before the card is sold, because it almost puts like an inflated value on the card, in my opinion. I think this is my opinion. I don't necessarily know this for a fact, like, because I would be interested to know how many cards like this have been touted as this like crazy sports card, this crazy card that could break this record, and then they actually do sell for the record. Like, it's kind of similar to like the bounties, how many bounties have been put out for some crazy one of one. Like, we did see Dave and Adams, I believe that they bought, I think it was the one of one Babe Ruth they put a bounty on and they bought, I remember, because they went out to the place and they made like a video about it. But like, how many of these bounties are put out there, and then the bounties are actually even, like, are the bounties just a way to market a person or their card, or the person like trying to market their business by saying they'll do this bounty, knowing that there's probably like a 50 to 75% chance that they never actually will even have to buy the card? And the fact that, but I think nowadays marketing has, within sports card marketing, I think it's changed a little bit where like this person's putting a bounty on this card isn't as newsworthy, in my opinion, than it was maybe a couple years ago, because the cards just haven't been worth the bounties nowadays. Like, I feel like most people putting a bounty out on a card, like, there isn't really a card where you can look at it and say someone would be willing to put a newsworthy number on a card. And so I'm wondering if that's similar with this card, the Babe Ruth card, where it's like, what does this card end up selling for? Does it end up selling for over $12 million? And I mean, I would wonder, like, the person who's buying this $12 million card, like, I don't know. I just don't necessarily love the approach to marketing of a specific card like this, because, like I said, we don't know where this figure is coming from. It may be coming from REA, potentially. Robert Edward Auction, that's what REA, I was trying to, in my head, I was like, I knew what it stood for, I was just mad, but I didn't want to say it out loud and then have it be wrong. But so REA, maybe it's coming from them, maybe it's coming from the seller of the card, or maybe it's coming from I would say it probably would come from a seller rather than a buyer, because obviously a buyer is not going to want to pay the top dollar for it, so it's probably coming from the seller, potentially. I mean, if they're looking at it and saying, well, if we know that this card, our valuation, if the person that has the card is trying to sell it, if they brought it somewhere and they said, well, this card is definitely worth, let's just say $5 million. If they say, okay, well, I'm going to get however much, and then there's probably going to be commissions, all this stuff. So let's just say they get like let's say they're going to get $4 million for the card. It would be worth putting out $1 million or $500,000 worth of marketing to these places to be like, hey, maybe this could be a $12 million card. So it's like, the value of it is being inflated because people are saying that it's a 12 mil. It could potentially break the record. Whether it should or shouldn't, I don't even know necessarily I think things have changed so much in the industry that it's very hard, I think, to put values on specific cards like this, especially rare and old vintage cards. Like, even new modern one-of-one cards, it's hard to really say nowadays compared to, where things were, and, everything was going up in value, and it was probably very easy to look at values and say, well, this is worth this, and this is worth this. But now it's like, what is this person going to do with the card? Why do they want to own this card, hypothetically, if it's $12 million or more than $12 million? Like, I don't know. I guess it's maybe something, maybe it's a status symbol. They can say they have the card and it's worth $12 million or whatever. But like that's the point that I'm trying to make here, is that I just don't know where this number is coming from. And like, if it's coming from somebody who's paying for marketing, because usually I would say mainstream outlets, mainstream new media, maybe some sports media would talk about this. But if it's like I said, Wall Street Journal, if it's like these random publications, they're not usually just getting into sports cards like this in that way. So I think that there's probably some paid media somewhere. I don't know where the paid media is coming from, but when you see these random people talking about the card, that's where you can kind of put two and two together and say, oh, well, there's probably some marketing put behind this, and is this going to affect the price of the card? I don't really know, because I don't really know what the value of it would be even before, if it because obviously Golden has sort of done this in the past too, where they've marketed these crazy cards and all of these things. So it's like, where is the line, I guess, is maybe one of the points of this podcast. I'm not really sure where things cross the line from like trying to sell a card to market manipulation to suggesting that a card should sell for a price that it shouldn't. It will definitely be an auction that I have my eyes on, because, like I said, I don't really know what the valuation will be. We'll see if it sells for the most of all time. I guess it could. I'm not really sure. But it's an auction that will probably be historic one way or the other. So probably like a week or two ago, we saw, it must have been 2 weeks ago, because I think I talked about this on Hobby Hotline, not this week, but last week. So actually, probably would have been 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point. Leaf announced that they signed The Rock as an exclusive athlete. Dwayne Johnson, like I said, I think there is some speculation on my end, if The Rock and Dwayne Johnson are the same entity, like the same intellectual property. I'm not 100% sure. But the controversy that I'm going to be talking about on today's episode is coming to us from David Peck. I'm looking at some tweets from David Peck, who I believe is like a big wrestling card guy. Yeah, I don't know, he's on Twitter, it's Michael Jordan of Wrestling Cards. I'm pretty sure he's one of the big, wrestling card information people on Twitter, which I think is really great. Darren Ravel, and then Scooby Club, which is the vice president, and CMO of Leaf Trading Cards. Now, David Peck came out, and I think this was I guess it says a day ago, so it either must have been a Monday thing or a Sunday thing. David Peck came out and said that he's hearing that Dwayne Johnson signed a stack of stickers for his wife's foundation, and it wasn't for Leaf. They just acquired them. And I think it must have came from Ravel, because then Ravel tweeted back to David Peck and said he didn't sign anything for Leaf. They bought them. It wasn't for Leaf, and the reason why and that's why the reason his agent has no idea. So I'm guessing there must have been some statement that his agent came out with and said that they weren't sure exactly where maybe some of these autographs were coming from. But then the next layer to this is that Scooby Club, who is, like I said, Greg, the CMO from Leaf, came out and said that they have confirmation and they have an affidavit apparently saying that The Rock is the sign. The signatures were for Leaf. Now, whether I don't really know here. This is actually like a pretty wild story, because we have the Leaf CMO coming out and saying we provided the labels to the foundation for the signing. They were always meant for us. That's what he said. And then he said also that they have a contract and they have an affidavit from The Rock or Dwayne Johnson or whatever it is. So this is just, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if we're going to get an answer to this one. Like, this seems like a lot of hearsay. Like, we do have some of probably the biggest names within cards and wrestling cards talking, well, not talking about it, but biggest names within cards and wrestling cards being the ones that are talking the story. They're making the story on Twitter, which is very interesting. So, I don't know if, because the big thing that Ravel he was actually pretty angry, because he was saying that the guy from Leaf was trying to discredit him and affect his status, which I don't know. I mean, if you're Ravel, sure, I could see how that could be annoying, to be honest, but it's dude, Ravel, you have 4 million followers. If anybody at this point who knows Darren Ravel, they know, if you know who Darren Ravel is, you know that he can be very how do I want to put this? Very matter of fact about a lot of things. Very the words that he's saying is 100% what he is meaning when certain things are coming. There's a big I don't know. It's not a controversy or whatever, but there's a big thing and I don't know. Darren Ravel's very good at Twitter. So it could be something where he is sort of self-aware a little bit. And whenever a celebrity or a famous person or a famous athlete dies, he has, I don't know. Well, there was actually a controversy. I think it was Jackie Robinson or something, where he had or it was, maybe it was Jackie I think it was Jackie Robinson. He had some letters that were written from the family when the person was on the road, I think it was. and he bought the letters, and the family was like, hey, you should donate those to the museum or like the foundation. He goes, no, I don't think. He was like, no, I'm not going to do that. They're mine. Like, I bought them. And like, so it's like he sort of does this thing sometimes on Twitter. So like, I don't think you're really, I don't know. The controversy here, I think, is more just that like I don't know, potentially could have seen I don't know. It's just really, it's wild. Like the controversy is basically that Ravel and David Peck is kind of, I think, sourcing Ravel here, but Ravel is saying that the Leaf bought the signatures on the sheet, and that Leaf is saying that no, they gave the Rock the sheet to sign. The autographs were always going to be for Leaf. They were never going, which like, I just don't know why he would, like, if I'm Ravel, like, why, like, I don't even know what to really think of this story. It's like, why would The Rock be signing signature stickers, like, if they weren't, like, where would they even came from in the first place? Like, it seems like a very confusing story that maybe Ravel got wind of, and maybe he's not, like, willing to admit that he's wrong in this circumstance, potentially, or this could be a big controversy, because it's like, is Leaf... Like, they just signed The Rock, like, to an exclusive contract. Like, why are they not getting these autographs from Dwayne Johnson? Like, why are they having to go out and buy these autographs if, like, they signed them? I don't know what's going to come of this. It's still sort of a developing story, but I think it's kind of one that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on in the next few days to see sort of what happens to it. Because, like I said, if I think it looks bad for whichever side ends up being wrong here. I don't really know who to believe, and that's the other thing. I don't really have a determination. I don't think at this point I don't have obviously enough information, and this is like way higher level than any info that I would have on my own side. But like whoever ends up being wrong in this circumstance is probably going to be taking a pretty big L. Like if it's Leaf, they probably are going to take a bigger L than, like, if it's Darren Ravel, because, like, Darren Ravel is just getting a source telling him this probably. If this is Leaf actually buying signatures from The Rock when they said that they signed him to an exclusive contract, that looks pretty bad. That looks probably just as bad. So, I don't know. It's going to be something I keep my eye on for, to see, like, who these autographs came from, if they really were for Leaf, or if Leaf bought them. It's going to be very interesting to watch. So the biggest card, definitely the biggest card in Topps Chrome, McDonald's, All-American, Bronny James, Superfractor 1 of 1. That card's been pulled. I guess it's listed on. I've never heard of the website. I saw a couple people, tweeting out about like where it's listed. I've never really heard of this website. I guess it's kind of like Facebook Marketplace. I think. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure. I've never really heard of it, but. Something that I was thinking about, and I was on a show with one of my friends, Carter, who does a college football podcast, and he also does a football card podcast, and he had me on his show, and was kind of asking me some general questions about the hobby, and that actually was good timing, because yesterday morning, I was actually thinking about this as well, like, why, like, has sort of the hobby decreased the way that it has? I don't think that there is I don't think there's necessarily one reason why we've seen this. But the Bronny James card, for example, I think is probably one that does have a little bit of an effect. And here's what I mean by that. The Bronny James card is listed for $15,000. So, the person who's buying that card for $15,000, in my opinion, is not someone who is in the same tax bracket as someone probably like me or you who's listening to this podcast, most likely. Because $15,000 to spend on anything is that's a lot of money. And to spend it on one sports card of one player who has never even played a college basketball game. Now, granted, that card hasn't sold for $15,000, so it may not sell for $15,000. It may sell for, whatever, $10,000, $11,000, $12,000, $13,000, or maybe less than that. But either way, it's going to sell for thousands and thousands of dollars. There have been thousands and thousands and thousands of cards like that card, specifically, like exactly like that card, that have sold for with price tags like that, and then they end up just decreasing and continue to decrease. And I think that's one of them. That's a pretty significant factor. I think also the thing that I was thinking about actually yesterday of like just the general market, like I think that there may be too many auction houses. And well, let me reword that. I don't think there's too many. I just think that there are a lot, and there are too many for cards to. There's too many auction houses for buyers. That's maybe how I would put it, because a couple years ago it was like just really eBay, and then like maybe you could say Golden has always kind of been around, but PWCC now has an auction house, and Alt has an auction house, and ComC I think is not an auction house, but they're an auction. They have auctions, but they're a platform for buying and selling cards. But I think that the buyer of cards, I think that the more places to buy and sell cards, it doesn't. I'm going to use the word hurt. The word hurt sellers, but it doesn't necessarily really hurt anybody to have more places to buy and sell cards. It hurts the prices of cards for sure, and I also think that it hurts the sellers of cards. I think that's maybe one way I would put it, because what ends up happening is that a card sells, and only really the people that know about that auction house are going to be buying that card, right? Now, granted, we're seeing more marketing within auction houses and stuff like that, and marketing becoming better, but it's like if you have Golden, you have PWCC, you have like a ton of different places where people can buy cards. Someone who is buying cards is not going to know every single auction house. Robert Edward Auctions, you've got Leland Auctions, you've got all of these auctions, Heritage Auctions. Like I said, there are countless. There's too many to count, number of auction houses. So all of these places, there's going to be a variety of people buying on all of these platforms, but not one buyer is going to know on all the platforms what cards are going up at all times. So, like, if somebody could be wanting to buy, I don't know, for example, a Tom Brady Contenders autograph, but, like, and I would say, I don't know off the top of my head how many times that card has necessarily sold over the past year, but let's just say it's sold 10 times. Let's say that card is sold 10 times. And I think it might be more, it could be less, I'm not sure. I'm kind of making up some numbers here, but let's say that card is sold 10 times over the course of the year. And that card has most likely sold on each auction house once or twice. So it's like the seller of that card doesn't really know where they're going to try and where they would really want to try and sell that card for the top dollar, which I think, in my opinion, I think you could also look at the buying and selling selling at the most amount of money may not necessarily be as great for sports cards, but I think it's obviously good for sellers, depending on who the seller is. Like if the seller is somebody who is, hopefully using that money to get more into sports cards and making it more self-sustaining in the hobby, that's obviously good. If he's buying other cards and, he's funding the other sellers who are also funding other sellers and stuff along these lines. But like, a person who wants to buy that Tom Brady Contenders autograph they're not going to know every single auction house. Like, sure, they're going to be doing their research and they're going to be trying to find the card, but it's like if there is 10 opportunities to buy those cards on 10 different platforms, there's probably a chance that the pricing of it, a buyer who is probably willing to spend more money won't know that a card is listed on a certain website. And that's all to say that I think the auction houses are making money on these sales. Like, they're making commissions on the sales. So the auction houses don't really care. Like, obviously they're hoping to get more money from the sale because then they get a higher commission from that sale. But like, they don't necessarily really care whether a card, like if they have a card, like if they have a Tom Brady's Contender, let's keep using that as an example. If they have a Tom Brady's Contender autograph, I think that they have a baseline of where they want to sell that card, but I think the work of the consignment and the selling of the card and the commissions that the auction house are getting, like, I'm not sure what the fees are for different, because they're different on all the different auction houses, but it's like, if you look at that card, like, what are those auction houses really doing other than just having the auction house, which obviously that's maybe a little facetious to say, like, because it's like, obviously without the auction houses they wouldn't be able to sell the card, but it's like these auction houses, if they're selling a card and all their, a majority of them, some of them, we saw in the Golden documentary, we saw them reaching out to people trying to get stuff onto the platform. And in a way, it's interesting because it's like they're selling the seller. Like, they're trying to sell the seller to get them to, I just use the word seller a lot. They're selling the person selling the card to sell on their platform versus other platforms because they're trying to get the commission. And whatever the commission ends up being, they're going to get it on that card, whatever it ends up selling for. So, like, I don't know. I mean, and then I think also with I think another kind of thing here with this topic of, like, for example, the Bronny, bring it back to the Bronny James card. Like, I don't know how you could figure this out, or if there's a way to figure this out. Like, I would be interested to know the amount of money, I guess, like, lost is one way of putting it, but, like, the amount of money that has been spent on players that, like, don't end up panning out. Like, the amount of money that have been spent on, Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, who still maybe is kind of, his story, his career is not over, but, he is a backup at this point. But, like, the Mac Jones, like Zach Wilson, and I mean, luckily for that draft class, there was a couple people that panned out. And even Zach Wilson, for example, his career hasn't even really panned out either, where he still has a lot of ways to go, potentially. Mac Jones, obviously, as a Patriots fan, it's just devastating to see how his fall from grace, really just being basically the same quarterback throughout the 4 years that he's played for the Patriots, like, not getting any better, basically staying exactly the same. Really unfortunate. But the amount that people are spending on these rookies is never going to, I think the amount that you're spending on the high value rookies is never, that's a losing game, in my opinion. And I've always, I think I've said on this podcast that I always want to use this platform as an opportunity to spread awareness about that type of stuff, because I think that prospecting and all of these types of things is one of the most exciting parts about sports cards, but it's also where you're gambling the most and where it's the easiest to lose. Like, it's not even like you're gambling, like, it's not even like you're gambling on the spread of a game, like, where whatever, it's minus 100 odds. Like, you're betting on odds that are, like, not in your favor whatsoever. Like, you're betting on, like, you're almost betting on, like, the odds, if we're talking gambling terms, you're almost betting, like, minus 500 for, like, realistically what should be, like, a plus 500 odds for a player, for their cards to really pan out in the long term. And I think this Bronny James card, again, is a perfect example. If you're buying this card or you're looking into Bronny James cards, you're betting on something that is, like, such a minuscule percentage that it's, like, it's hard. It's really, it's impossible for me to justify. I can say if you're buying prospects of players who are inexpensive, that's fine, because, if they don't pan out, that's a thing where it's like, you're taking long shot odds on a card that doesn't cost you that much. But you're also taking the same long shot odds on a card that's going to cost you a lot of money. So that's why I always want to give this I always want to take this opportunity to warn people and make sure that they're buying cards and they're doing their research and all these types of things, and just kind of maybe it's a little bit more of a introspective look into cards right now and what the market is doing. Because I think it's always going to be interesting to me how the market is changing and how it's always changing within sports cards. So, the Bronny James card, we'll see what it sells for. Should it be that price? That's not really for me to say. It actually is probably just for what someone is willing to pay for that card ultimately. Topps Chrome update has officially been released, and this is the product that is going to have, I guess, one of the new biggest cards. Like, when National Treasures first came out, and when, like, Upper Decks, the Cup first came out, and when and then also Upper Decks Exquisite came out, these cards were, I guess we didn't really know at the time that these cards were going to be as big as they were. I would say that these, like, one-of-one patch cards that are coming out of Topps Chrome update I would say they're probably going to be as big as those cards. I guess, unfortunately, there's only going to be one. They're all one of ones. So, with those other products, with those other cards, there are cards that are numbered to 99. So there are going to be a ton of them. Now, the one thing I saw on Twitter that I thought was kind of interesting was that the cards themselves were not going to be included in the product, I guess. Like, this was something that I was seeing people talk about, and I guess I don't know. I'm not sure 100% sure if Topps has confirmed this is the case, but, like, they're going to be redemption cards, is what I saw. And that means that some of the product, or they're going to be redemption cards in blasters and hobby and the retail and hobby products. From what I saw, like there's a Breaker exclusive product from, I think it's called like Breaker's Delight or something, which this is a very new product for me and not something that I don't know. I guess I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of. Like, I get that at one point there was just like one release of the product. Like, there was never like a retail and hobby. So at some point there was a shift when it became like retail with blasters and mega boxes. And then there was also like a hobby box release that was only released in hobby, and like Targets and Walmarts didn't have these hobby boxes. So I guess at one point there was a shift where those products they came out for the first time. And I would imagine that was probably a pretty big shift in the market. I guess this would be kind of similar. Like the Breakers, I think it's called Breaker's Delight, I guess is what I saw. It's a Breaker only product. And within the Breaker product, I guess the cards, they have, instead of them being in like packs the way that they are in the retail and hobby, they come in like a plastic container. So at least from, like I said, this is all from what I saw. So some of this info may be different, I guess. I like I said, I'm going based on the information that I've seen on what's going on. So like Breaker's Delight is a product that has like a plastic wrapping, and it's a plastic, so it like keeps the cards safe. So some of the one-of-one cards are going to be going into these Breaker Delight style products, but then the cards that would be in like a blaster, or the cards that would be in like a hobby box, I guess they're just going to be redemptions. If I'm reading what I saw correctly, which I understand the point of these redemptions, because they're saying that they want the cards to be, because like I said, this is what I've seen, that they want the cards to be safely given to the people that pull the redemptions, because they don't want the cards to go into packs, because they don't want the cards to be scuffed or any of these things. But it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of this, or if I like it, or if I don't like it, because I think that the pulls of these cards are going to be extremely important. And the fact that when someone pulls the card, they're not going to have the card necessarily right away, I don't love, but at the same time, I understand that they're maybe looking at the QC process of what's gone on over this past year within Topps products, and they're just like, maybe we just want to take an extra level of precaution when it comes to these cards coming in packs, and they don't want the extra level of danger, I guess. Like, that's probably the main reason why they want these cards to be redemptions. They want the cards to be able to be preserved. And then the other part about it that I saw was like the other level of, I guess, preservation, I guess, is like that you can get them graded right away. Like Topps partnered with basically every single grading company except for PSA, which that was something that I thought was a little bit interesting. I didn't see PSA on that list, but I guess it's like you can, rather than getting the card sent to you, you can have your redemption sent directly to one of the grading companies and get the card produced that Topps made directly graded, rather than having the card sent to you, which, like, I you know, when these cards get graded, I guess I'll be interested to see, like, what are the grades on these cards. Like, again, it's a thing where it's like, I understand the point that Topps wants you to use these grading, and they want the cards to be graded with these grading companies, but, like, what if one of these cards doesn't get, like, I guess the whole point of grading in general is, like, doesn't this sort of defeat the purpose of grading, I guess? Like, doesn't it sort of defeat the purpose of, like, the opportunity that the card could get a lower grade? But, if I'm Topps, like, I would hope that, I guess I would hope that the cards are all going to be high graded. Like, and this is the other thing. It's like, does this mean that all the cards are going to be graded highly? I would hope so. Like, I would hope that if Topps is the one sending the card to the grading company, like, that they're going to grade the card highly. Like, but at the same time, it's like, I guess that doesn't, it maybe defeats the purpose of grading. Like, it almost feels like it's like you're taking steps out of the process of what makes a card lower graded. Like, you're taking the packing process, you're taking the handling process, all of out of that. And it almost like feels like it's defeating the purpose of grading. I suppose. I don't know. But, these cards, they're coming out of Topps Chrome update. We've seen the checklist. It's a monster checklist of all of these massive cards. We've already seen one of the cards being pulled, too, like on Twitter. I believe there was a Pirates rookie that had his card first pulled, which, like I said, must have come out of Breaker's Delight, because I think it was Daddy Rips, I'm pretty sure, that pulled this card. So we've already seen one of the cards being pulled live. I guess the last piece that I will talk about on this podcast will be, I'm interested to know, like, why are they putting the cards live in some products and not in the others? It almost, again, it defeats almost the purpose of the randomness of, like if they know what see, this, it is sketchy to me, because it's like they know what cards are going in what product. So it's like, it almost adds another layer of, like, well, if they know what cards are going in what product, who's to say they don't send things a certain way? Or, like, who's to say they don't put the Anthony Volpe card into a Breaker's Delight, or they don't put the Jordan Walker into a Breaker's Delight so the card gets pulled? But it's like, it feels like it's defeating the purpose of breaking and pulling cards, I guess, is what my thought process when I heard something like this is a possibility. I guess we'll see what cards come out of what product. Like, I don't know. Topps, it seems like they maybe have a little bit more control over these cards than maybe I would particularly like. It's such a rare card and it's such a hard card that we're going to see pulled, that, like, over these next couple of weeks, we'll see the redemptions pulled, we'll see the full cards pulled, and I'm guessing there will be people that will keep track of which cards are pulled out of Breakers, because this also gives them the opportunity to be like, well, why are the Breakers pulling all of these cards? Like, if the top 5 rookies are all coming out of the Breakers Delight, that's going to be very weird to me. I hope that's not the case, but at this point, we don't know what cards are going to be in which product, or which cards are going to be in which configuration of the product. So we will have to wait and see which configuration pulls the most amount of cards. I'm hoping that they figured out and they just were able to do it at a random thing, and they were able to figure out a way to do it at random and put the cards in random packs, and not do it in a way that's like, not do it in a way that gives anyone any speculation about what Topps is doing. that's what I'm really hoping of these products. Now that the fact that we've seen the cards coming out, we see what they're going to come out in. Like we're seeing, they're not going to be in packs for some packs. They're going to be in some other packs. We'll see over the next few weeks which cards get pulled out of which configuration. I'll be keeping an eye on it. It's definitely something I am interested in. And to wrap things up, I am excited for these cards because I think it's such a big, important card that I'm excited that they're finally coming out, and I'm excited that they're in Topps Chrome, but I'll be keeping an eye to see which configurations are going to pull which configuration are going to pull the best cards out of this product, to be honest. This past week, the news that Sotheby's I think that they're partnering with the NBA, I'm pretty sure, from what I've seen. They're partnering with the NBA, and a lot of like game-worn jerseys are going to be sold at Sotheby's, which if you don't know what that is, it's an art auction house, which I guess there's a couple different things here that I'm really thinking about. Like, so it's an art auction house. I think it's interesting that they are getting into sports jerseys and memorabilia. If you follow Gary V or you follow like his NFT project, V Friends, they sold, or that might have been Christie's. Okay, sorry, but either way. So PSA, Gary graded essentially or got authenticated the original V Friends designs. And I forget if they sold through Christie's or Sotheby's. Now that I'm saying Christie's out loud, but either way, those sold through one of these auction houses as well. Now, does this mean we're going to see sports cards sell at some of these auctions? Probably not. I mean, the art world is actually it's an insane world. Like the actual industry is very similar to sports cards, obviously, but I don't know. It is something that I think, unfortunately, a lot of, I don't know if you could call it scamming or if you could call it tax evasion goes on in this art world, which I would be interested to know how much of that maybe occurred in the sports card world over the past few years. Like with one of the big scams within the art world is basically like, you have, and I'm not talking about like the Andy Warhols or the Basquiat's or any of these like super famous artists that are actually famous and they have big pieces of art that have sold for millions and millions of dollars. Like Jay-Z wrote about, like he bought like a Basquiat for like $10 million or something like that. And there was a Basquiat that sold for, I think it was $100 million over these past couple years. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about like what ends up happening. And like, I don't know. I've heard this through, people talking about online that this occurs. So essentially what people do is rich people that are trying to avoid paying taxes, they'll buy like a piece of art and then they'll go and they'll get it appraised by someone that they know in the industry. And the appraiser will say it's worth 10 times what they actually bought it for. And it's interesting because it's not what was paid for it. It's what the appraiser essentially says that it's worth. And for some reason, that industry has never been regulated, which it's because it's all rich people doing it, which is probably the main reason why it's never been regulated or looked into, if I'm going to be completely honest. But like, essentially what happens is so they say they buy it for $1,000. The art appraiser says it's worth $100,000. Then they donate it to a museum, and then essentially they got like and I don't think this is exactly how taxes work either, but they got essentially like a $90,000 loss on their taxes by donating something that was worth $100,000 that they paid $1,000 or $10,000 for. And I think that's an issue in the art world, and obviously the reason why it's not been looked into is probably just because it's all rich people or whatever. But so now we're seeing potentially, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's interesting. I don't think that's what's going on in sports cards because I don't think people are donating sports cards really. Like if they're buying them, like if they are, maybe that's smart. I don't know how you would really be able. I don't think at this point in the market you wouldn't really be able to do that. Most likely, just because the market is going to tell you what the price of a card is. Like you can't really. There's no person that's able to say this $1,000 card is actually worth $100,000 because if it's sold for which is interesting when I can go on in the art world. I'm not like 100% sure why that would be the case, but it is what it is. So now Sotheby's is selling these game worn, like basically like some of them, like for example, the Wembanyama jersey, the rookie debut Wembanyama jersey is going to be sold through Sotheby's. So I think, and to go big picture here, I'm wondering where Fanatics comes in this standpoint, because one thing that I hope that Fanatics can do, I don't know if they will, but when they're coming in and they're taking over the NFL and the NBA licenses, they do it with the MLB, but I'm hoping they can get like authentic jerseys back into cards, like, because that's one of the big, I think that's actually one of the biggest scams within the sports card industry, is that RPAs and cards that are patch cards, they're player worn, but that's like, that means nothing. That means nothing. And honestly, it actually means nothing. Like you look at it and say, well, the player wore it at one point. So all it means is that the player was given the jersey, they put it on, they took it off. They didn't wear it in a game. They didn't wear it during these things or anything. Like, so it really is, honestly, in my opinion, one of the bigger scams within the sports card industry is the fact that card companies are able to skirt around the memorabilia part of the piece of the industry and offer that as like a incentive within products that you can get one of these cards. So I'm wondering if Fanatics is going to come in and they're going to either partner with Sotheby's, or like if they're going to be buying these jerseys, like, you know, because if we could look at a card and say we know that the jersey is authenticated and it's the jersey from this game, I think that's actually a really significant deal. And it's what happened with these MLB debut patches. I think on the cards we're starting to see a couple of them have been released, and also we're seeing the card being pulled, and it's actually just basically a scan. Like I actually was talking to Danny earlier, and that's where we were kind of chatting about this, and we were wondering how this was going to be, and one of his things was, he was like, yeah, I mean, I hope at least that they don't make these redemptions, like at least hopefully they're cards, and it looks like there are cards. It says autograph on there and you can redeem them, so those are starting to get pulled. And then the actual cards that are in the Breakers Delight product, those have started to be pulled as well. And on the back of the card, actually, so it's a thick card, and the front of it has the patch, and then the back of it actually has where they have that authentication sticker, which you can go and you can type in that number into MLB.com or MLB somewhere, and you can see obviously that sticker is obviously saying it's authentic from from the game, from that MLB debut game, you know. So I'm hoping that Topps can come in Topps and Fanatics, whatever. But I'm hoping that they can come in and really fix. I don't know if it's fixed necessarily. I do think that they do need to step in here and, you know, get back on track. And even if it's buying jerseys of players, buying jerseys from cards. Buying jerseys from players from games that aren't massive. I just think getting game-worn stuff actually back into cards is a lot more important than maybe people are thinking it is, because it seems like one of the bigger scams within the sports card industry, that they can offer this card with a player-worn thing, which is, it's really just, you know, like I said, it's just they put on a jersey, they take it off, they put it into a card. It's player worn. It's not game worn. So that's one of the biggest changes that I really hope that Topps and Fanatics can come in and make the adjustment within the sports card industry, because I think it will add a lot of value to products, and it'll add a lot of value for customers if they're able to pull some of these cool jersey patches rather than just the player worn patches.